everybody. Welcome to Podcast Bonita, where Rachel and I are slowly becoming more like Matt and Trey, because now we're only going to be talking about Randy this episode.
But in usual Podcast Bonita fashion, we'll just be ripping on him the entire time. Probably.
Most likely, but also at the same time, we're going to give credit where credit is due, because contrary to recent seasons and our own personal feelings about current Randy, Randy can actually be a good character. I know it's been a really long time since he's been a really useful and good character, but he's still, there are those qualities, and we're actually going to be ranking Randy episodes, which I'm sure everybody totally wanted us to do.
Yeah, I figured we'd give it a try, because these ranking things are all the rage on YouTube these days, and as high-quality YouTubers, we gotta jump on the trend.
Oh, most definitely. We gotta make that, monetization. We gotta get that coin. Next thing, we're gonna have, sponsorships from fucking Squarespace or some shit. Just kidding. We are not even mediocre enough to get that. So what we wanted to do before we ranked is, like we mentioned, Randy can actually be a good character, but it's dependent upon how he's used, because Randy in general, his nature and his personality hasn't changed over the years. He's still kind of an incompetent, stereotypical dumbass dad, but the way he's used and portrayed in the show can make or break that reception. So, Randy at his best, for me at least, because I went back and looked, I found this list of South Park episodes that are mostly Randy based, and there are some really awesome episodes in there, but there are also some hella awful stinkers in there. So, we found that Randy at his best is when he's used to portray story beats that would be out of character or just kind of unrealistic for especially the child characters to do. So episodes like More Crap, it makes more sense for Randy to be the focal point of that type of story, or things like Broadway Bro Down. Don't think it'd be totally appropriate to have, the young boys be really excited about getting underage blowjobs. We don't, we're not a Shane Dawson sketch, okay? So, this South Park here, there's a little bit of decorum.
To be fair, though, there is a whole episode centered around Kenny trying to get an underage blowjob.
Well, doesn't that... Actually, no, it does. I just realized it does happen because he totally dies at the end. But, again, he is used best when he plays like that dad trope. When there's no other character to realistically portray a father, even if he's in the wrong, it makes sense. Randy works really well in those situations. He also works alongside Stan the best when he's a vessel for Stan to teach a message. Like in Bloody Mary and Apologies to Jesse Jackson, Randy's doing the wrong thing, but it allows Stan to teach a moral based on Randy's actions. So again, and ultimately, even though the show is a comedy-based show, everybody has their own quips and jokes, Randy truly is a comedic relief character. He's a comedic relief character within a comedy. He does the ridiculous things. He doesn't tend to have a lot of those edgy one-liners or whatever. He does those ridiculous things, but in smaller portions, to not distract from the entire narrative of that episode. And he's basically fallen into the trap that a lot of forms of media have, where they want to spotlight the comedic relief and then their character no longer serves that purpose. It just kind of falls apart. So you're going to see that when we rank these episodes.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself.
Yep, and you didn't. So I'm finally carrying my weight. We should get started. And just so everybody knows, like, not every single, like, episode that has, like, a Randy storyline is gonna be on this list, because we really tried to narrow it down to Randy-centered episodes, which, again, there are a lot more of them now than there were, but if you see, if there's a missing episode that you're like, hey, Randy had a major part in this, we probably know. It's just, it may not be a whole episode centered around Randy. We had to put a lid on it somewhere.
Yeah, agreed. We tried to pick episodes that were at least Randy was prominent, but I mean, there's only so many we can pick for a video.
All right, you ready to get started? What's the first episode we're going to rank?
We're about to rank A Nightmare on FaceTime.
So, this is like when Randy was starting to get used a little bit more. He wasn't bad at this point, but you can kind of see the transition to where he becomes like a focal character. He doesn't entirely replace the boys' storyline here. He doesn't entirely replace them, which is good. Like I mentioned before, he's kind of a foil for Stan a little bit, but there's not a lesson that Randy learns or anything. I guess he just kind of learns that Blockbuster is finally dead, but who doesn't know that at this point? So for me, it's still a funny episode, but I don't think it's Randy at his like absolute best, but he's also not bad. So this would be like a B or a C rank for me.
I agree. I think this episode's a B because the way Randy's used in it is really, really funny. I love like the Shining parody that we have going on, and I love the way he interacts with Stan. But you're right, it's not Randy at his absolute best.
No, and the thing is, I don't want to dampen the actual really, really good episodes by putting this as high as some of the other really great episodes. So this would be like a B. Randy is starting to become more of like a focal character, but it hasn't gotten to the point where he's incredibly annoying and overused.
Yeah, very true. All right, our next episode is Bloody Mary.
Now, this one, dang, I probably should have rated Nightmare on FaceTime lower, because this one is, again, like I mentioned, like the perfect Stan and Randy episode. But really, Stan is kind of, to me, I think, like the best emotional part of the episode. Like, it's kind of a rare instance where it ends happy for them a little bit, and Stan isn't completely embarrassed by Randy. This would also probably be a B or an A for me.
I think this one's more of a B because I, like you, I really enjoy the episode, but I agree that I think most of like the episode's strengths come from Stan's storyline. And Randy is very funny, but I'm kind of looking at these Randy episodes like, well, okay, how funny is Randy in the episode? We probably shouldn't rank it based on how other characters are.
Yeah, I agree. Now, let me ask this. Do we have an S tier? Is this an S, A, B, C, D tier, or is this an A, B, C? Because I've seen a lot of Animal Crossing videos with an S tier.
No, it's just A, B, C, D, F.
Okay. S tier, I guess, in this situation is like shit tier.
Oh, okay. So like F. Got it.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah. This would also be a B episode for me. I love like the overall message, but to me that message comes from Stan more than Randy.
Yeah, totally agree.
But a good example of their dynamic. So I don't hate this episode like at all. It's a solid episode. It's not perfect. It's not like way up there, but it is a solid episode.
Next one is Broadway Bro Down.
This one, it's really weird because at first I had this as, oh yeah, Randy is like great in this episode, But, like, I kind of look back on it when I was first, like, making my own, like, personal opinions. I was like, this is such a great Randy episode. But I kind of look back and I'm like, I mean, it's funny, but, like, he is annoying by the end. He's funny, but it's bothersome. To me, I like his struggle. I think he shines best in this episode when he's taking, like, Sharon to shows and everything. When he starts trying to write his own, to me, that kind of, like, it kind of hits a low point in the pacing. I don't think that stuff is as funny as him, like, dressing up as Spider-Man and trying to stop Shelley from giving blowjob. So this would probably actually be more of, like, a C tier. It's fine. Half of his interactions in this episode are great. Half of them are just kind of, like, subpar to me.
Yeah, I think I agree. I mean, I absolutely think that the Spider-Man part is, like, the funniest part of the whole episode. So that's keeping it from being lower, but yeah, it's kind of odd because, like, Randy himself is actually, I think, the funniest part of the episode, but even then it's, like, not that great.
It's weird where he's, like, equally the best and the worst part of the episode. And also, like, it's weird. I have this kind of funny, unsure balance on how I feel with his interaction with Shelley at this point. Because on one hand, it's great that he cares about the safety of Shelley. On the other hand, like, it's funny, but, like, he does end up indirectly killing a child at the end of it, and he's pretty insensitive towards Shelley. So he's like, it's like a one step forward, two step back, because, you know, Randy, again, I think Randy is at his worst when he's used only as, like, a weapon of torture to his family, which is incredibly common nowadays. Like, he has no repercussions really at the end of this episode either, and that's another part that bothers me, where he's just constantly putting his family in peril and distress, but there's no, like, reward for it. There's nothing you gain back from it other than seeing people annoyed and tired of him. And when you start to care about the other characters, you don't want them to constantly be upset and miserable. Like, I love Stan, I like Sharon, and I really like Shelley. I don't like them constantly being miserable at the hands of Randy. So that's kind of a trope that's going to rear its head the more we talk about these later episodes.
Yeah, agreed. It's like, maybe this is stupid of us, but, like, I don't know, it's like, I don't care how funny it is when Randy does it. Like, I don't want to see him, like, destroy his family's lives.
I don't want to see him destroy his family's life and his family be the only ones that suffer from it. That's why Nightmare on FaceTime really isn't that bad of an episode, because, like, Randy gets fucked over in the end again. So the shit he puts his family through is kind of paid off because he also gets some backlash of his own behavior. That's just how basic story elements will work when you have problematic characters. That's why, like, Cartman, for example, tends to work a lot, because he always gets the negative repercussions of his own actions. To some degree. There are some instances where, like, he doesn't, but it's meant to be negative towards the audience, to make a point. But again, if Randy suffers no, like, repercussions and his family is always miserable, it just gets tiring. You know, it's no longer funny.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So the next episode is Cock Magic. What do you think about this one?
Cock Magic. This one's just kind of boring. Like, it's boring. It's not, like, you know, it had its funny little bits, like, at first. Like, whenever somebody, like, regurgitates his penis, like, after a magic trick. If anybody hasn't seen that episode, that is the weirdest episode description I could possibly give, but it's extremely accurate. You know, this one would probably be like a D D tier for me. Like, it's not trouble. Like, it's really not, like, problematic. He's not doing anything to make anybody miserable. He's just making us miserable by not being funny. So, there is some misery there.
I agree. Again, this is definitely a D episode for me because it's not that funny, and also it's just very forgettable. I'm like, I forget what even happens in this episode. I mean, I get that the whole joke is that he misunderstands the cock magic thing, and then that the boys are doing. But I don't know. I always thought it was funnier when like the boys misunderstand adult things, not the other way around.
I agree exactly because that's a little bit more realistic and relatable. When boys like their parody of Lord of the Rings, where they don't understand that what they have is a porno, that's hilarious because like that's relatable. You know, you look at Randy. I mean, I in a way, to me, cock magic, it's just a play on words, and it doesn't have like any relatability to it, so it kind of loses a little bit of its comedic edge in there. But you know, it's not like the absolute worst. Its biggest issue is that it's just forgettable and unfunny. You know, if it were maybe a one-off thing, if they did like one-off joke for it, I think it'd be fine. But when it becomes like half of the episode, the joke has already run its course, and it's just kind of shock value after that.
Yeah, totally. All right, so the next episode is Crème Fraîche, which is a pretty iconic Randy episode.
Oh, yeah. This is an A tier for me. This one, you know, I've got to put it. It's one of those ones where it truly is like a Randy episode. It's Randy is the quintessential character in it. He has the major story points and everything. He has like he's in every single beat of that story. So, but he's used really, really well. It's great that he kind of it's funny because he can be used as an allegory for kind of like pornography. He treats the cooking channels like it's porn, which is a really clever thing. It makes more sense for an adult point of view than for one of the child characters. And also him cooking in general, and then him starting to cook for the school is a really interesting beat as well. That just makes sense to have an adult character portray that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Again, we have the same brain, I guess. This is an A because I love Randy's whole storyline. He's very funny when like he shows up to cook at the school and Stan's like embarrassed by him, and then he kind of starts freaking out because he's a little bit in over his head. And then his whole storyline with Sharon is also really great, and it like accumulates really great at the end of the episode. This is all around. It's a super funny episode, and yeah, it's definitely a pie.
Yeah, exactly. It's. I almost forgot about the Sharon part, which is also a huge. It's kind of half and half. So it has really good character relationships in it as well. You've got his stuff with Stan, like Stan trying to stop Randy from embarrassing him, and then like an interesting marriage point of view with Sharon. So that's always kind of nice when you can see a little bit of the relationship dynamics that aren't always talked about.
Yeah, and plus, I mean, you're right, this is like mainly a Randy episode, but you also have those storylines of like Stan and Sharon both reacting to this new obsession that he has, but the episode doesn't feel overstuffed either.
No, it really doesn't. Randy is funny, and he's really he's not causing misery to his family. You know, Stan's embarrassed, and, you know, there's like a little bit of like a marital strain from Sharon. There's like a little bit of insecurity, but it's resolved so that you have that satisfying character relationship in it.
Alright, so our next Randy episode is Fantastic Easter Special.
Why don't you talk about this one? Because I have to think about this one a little bit.
I love this episode, actually. I mean, again, like, I mostly like Stan's part in it the most, but the way Randy, his part in it, I actually think is really funny. It's like peak Randy being, like, so stupid and just thinking that it's, like, totally normal, and he, like, doesn't get why Stan is so confused. I don't think I would put it as an A, but I definitely like this episode a lot.
You see, like, when you explain it that way, I could definitely see ranking it as, like, a B tier. Originally, I would say, like, a C tier, but that's only because this isn't one of, like, my personal favorite episodes. But that being said, I don't dislike this episode. I like it more than dislike it at all. Like, there's nothing that I dislike about this episode. It's not one that sticks out in my head often, but, you know, it is actually, like, a really good episode when I think about it. It's kind of forgettable because I guess it's just not one of those universally known episodes, I guess, especially when you talk about a Randy episode. Because it's, again, this is kind of like a half and half. It's kind of like a half, well, let's say, like, a third Stan, a third Randy, and a third Kyle, because you also have Kyle's storyline in there. Yeah, I'd go ahead and put this in, like, a B tier, because Randy's not, like, a huge, he's not the entire episode, but the stuff that he adds is, like, funny. It's just not, like, his whole character doesn't, you know, it contributes to this episode, but it doesn't make the entire episode.
I think so, too. I think this episode is also a B. I feel like it's a very underrated Randy episode.
Underrated is a good word.
Alright, so the next thing I have for us to rank isn't a Randy episode, but it's more like a concept. So where would you rank the whole, like, storyline where Randy is Lorde?
See, you know, I kind of enjoyed the Randy is Lorde because, again, it really shines in the Sissy episode. It's a weird kind of thing because for the majority, it goes through a very weird progression. It's very weird. It starts off as just a weird, funny joke. For me, in that episode where he's just I think it's gluten-free Ebola. I think that's, like, his first appearance as Lorde. That is, like, S tier. That's perfect, or A tier, I guess. That's, like, mwah, the perfect amount of Randy. So funny. They carried it on, which I don't have an issue with. I genuinely don't have an issue with them carrying the joke on, but it's, like, it's okay, you know, it's funny, but it's not, like, the end-all, be-all. It was a good tool to get, the story across with the Sissy. Like, it was a really good way to kind of illustrate those points, so I give credit there. But, like, the more they use it, I think it's used a couple more times after that, it gets a little bit grating. So if I have to rate it all around, I think it's like a B or C tier.
I think it's definitely a C because, I mean, you're right, it is, like, as a concept funny, and it can be used in a really great way, like the Sissy episode. I love the part where Stan finds out that Randy is Lorde. He just faints. That's, like, hilarious to me. But you're right, it does kind of, like, wear out its welcome throughout the season, and plus this also was kind of, like, the gateway drug to full serialization, so I kind of hold a grudge against it for that.
See, if we only talked about his use in the Sissy and his, like, one appearance as Lorde really quickly, I would say it's, like, B and A tier. I'd say it's B and A tier. But the more he's used, like, his whole thing with, like, oh yeah, flick that bean, you know, it just kind of brings it down a little bit. So if we're gonna generalize the whole storyline, I would put it in a C tier.
Agree. So our next Randy episode is Margaritaville.
This one I would almost hesitate to call it a Randy episode. I feel like it's really a Stan episode kind of disguised as a Randy episode. See, I have to keep it independent of how I feel about the episode as a whole. Because as a whole, this is like a B episode for me. Randy's role in it, however, is just kind of like a C level for me. Like, I don't... He's a foil for both Stan and Kyle. Again, like, Kyle is the Christ figure, and, like, Stan just has to deal with Randy's regular shenanigans. But really, the best part of it is, like, Stan's part. Randy ignites the issue, but honestly, I felt like it really could have been done by another adult character if need be. It didn't have to be Randy. It was just most likely going to be Randy.
I don't know. I like this episode, and I like the part that Randy plays in it. Like you said, he is like a very much a foil for both Kyle and Stan. Like, I love the joke of him at the beginning where he's like using the Margaritaville and like lecturing Stan about economics while like being a total hypocrite. I think that's really funny, and that kind of kicks off Stan's storyline. I do like Randy like being a prophet opposite Kyle, and isn't there a whole scene where Randy's like throwing squirrels at Kyle or something?
Okay, you know what? That bumps it up to a B tier for me because that is really funny.
Yeah, and just the fact that, because Randy's like the main opposition to Kyle in this episode, right? And I struggle to think of any other adults where it could like escalate to that level of stupid where they're throwing squirrels. Like, I don't think any other adult besides Randy could do that. Maybe Garrison, I don't know.
You are right. Yeah, I would put this as a B tier, you know, because again, Randy in this episode doesn't shine for me, you know, he's not like the biggest draw of this episode. For me, that's definitely Stan's interactions and Kyle's Christ storyline. So yeah, I could put it as a B tier. Just for like Randy's role alone, he does serve a purpose. And he's got his funny moments, but he's not like the shining factor in this episode.
So this next episode is perhaps Randy's most loved episode, his most iconic, and that is Medicinal Fried Chicken.
A tier. I ain't gotta say nothing else. A tier. A fucking plus. If I could give it something higher than an A tier, I would. This is the number one. You know what? This episode deserves all the hype it can fucking get because it's just funny. It's funny, and Randy's genuinely like not making anybody miserable. Like, and that's the thing is the rest of the town has like the perfect reaction. Like they work so well together. Randy's thing is so ridiculous in this episode. Like the whole it's so ridiculous, so arbitrary, so like nonsensical that like if all the other characters took it way too seriously, it would just bring the whole episode down. But because like because the women of South Park are in on the joke, they're like, oh wow, he's got great balls. Like they're not worried about, oh my god, the kid. Like it just works so well. It just allows the episode to be funny. It can be funny. You can enjoy it for being ridiculous without constantly having to point a finger and be like, that wouldn't make sense. Somebody should be mad at that. Like, just let them... It's so damn funny. I love it. It's one of those, like... And again, it makes sense for Randy to play this role. It makes sense for him. It'd be really gross. And just out of place for another character to do this have this type of behavior. It just works for Randy.
I agree. I mean, as much as I hate Randy nowadays, I have to admit this episode's fucking great. And he is very funny in it. And I think a perfect scene that kind of encapsulates that is just when Randy has his nuts in the microwave, and then, like, Stan walks by, and he's like, Dad, Mom says to stop trying to give yourself cancer. And Randy's like, I'm just gonna get a little bit of cancer. It's just so funny, and you're right, it works so well, because, like, the whole town is in on it, and it's like, it's not just Randy being, like, a loud, weird asshole, it's like, no, he's, like, a specific dumb person in this whole, like, dumb town, and that's why I think it's so funny.
Everybody else, like, joins it, and Sharon is in love with her scrotum coat. You know, I love that. I love that because everybody's in on the joke. Everybody's in on the joke, and it just makes this scenario just a little bit more believable. If everybody else in the town goes with it, like you as an audience member, like, oh yeah, that's hilarious. That's great. Like, you don't need to point out, the characters don't need to point out that something's ridiculous. Like, you as a viewer is just gonna know what he's doing is dumb and stupid. You don't have to have another character point that out. That just kind of ruins the speed of the joke. It just ruins the inertia there. So,
yeah, definitely agree.
A tier, absolute favorite Randy episode. Even though those are kind of few and far between, absolute favorite.
So our next Randy episode is another really popular one that is more crap.
You know, and this one also, again, just like I said in the last one, this one just makes sense for Randy to play this focal role. It just makes sense for him. Like, yeah, it could be something that Cartman would do, but, like, him going up against Bono would be really weird. That in of itself is already weird. So, like, to me, it just works really well with Randy. It's funny, and it also pokes humor at, like, the show itself, you know? Because Randy's not meant to be evil. You know, Randy, I mean, later episodes would kind of make me reconsider that. But Randy's not meant to be evil, kind of like Cartman is. So him doing this just, like, it's stupid, but it's like, harmless. It's genuinely harmless. So it just kind of makes sense for Randy to be the character to act this crazy, ridiculous thing out. Very similar to how I feel about Medicinal Fried Chicken. I just don't think this one's quite as funny, but I'd still put it as an A-tier episode.
I agree. I think this one's definitely an A. The whole thing is really funny. It has a ridiculous premise, but I think it kind of works. I love the whole parody where Randy, like, he gets, like, an ultrasound for his poop or whatever. He, like, treats it like a baby. And the whole part where he is taking a crap and he's like, ha 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 ha, like, that's so funny. And then I also love his emotional arc in this episode too. Like, where it's kind of like, yeah, this thing is, like, really gross and stupid, but you understand why it, like, means so much to him because he has never won anything. He's never done anything really cool except make 2 kids. Alright, so our next Randy episode to rank is Overlogging.
This one, again, you know, this one is less of a Randy-focused episode than the last two that we just talked about. It's more of like a whole town episode, which I really like. I really enjoy when the whole town is in on something. You know, it revolves around everybody kind of having to interact with another. And I know I probably sound like a broken record, but Randy in particular in this episode is really good. He's really funny. He's funny. It just, again, I'm going to keep repeating myself. I know I sound so repetitive, but again, this is when he's used the best. He plays that little niche part in the overall storyline, kind of that pornography, you know, specifically. Everybody else is, like, addicted to the internet in general. Randy in particular is addicted to internet porn, so he gets to cover that little niche of the story, and he works really, really well. So, another A tier for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Randy, I mean, like you said, he's very, very funny in this episode. Like, just the image of him covered in semen, and then he's like, oh my god, there was a ghost. Like, that scene by itself is amazing. Yeah. Yeah, that scene is pretty awesome. And I guess I always thought of it as a Randy type episode because, like, he's the one that, like, picks up and moves the family, and, like, it kind of follows the Marshes. So, yeah, I can see that.
Like, if you had to pick a main character in this episode, I guess Randy would be kind of the main character. But I think, like, the actual actor in this episode is the whole town interacting kind of as one. So, yeah. A tier for me. Again, this is a really good use of Randy.
Yeah. Alright. I will put it in the A. Okay, so the next one is actually my favorite Randy episode. And it's kind of a surprise to a lot of people. And that one's Pinewood Derby.
Oh, wow. You know, I definitely see it as a Randy episode. You're very much like a fan of the obscure Randy episodes.
I am.
It was Fantastic Easter special. Now it's this episode. So, why don't you give your thoughts? Give your thoughts on this episode.
Well, I like this one because, like you said, it's kind of like a really great way to use Randy. It's, it just kind of shows him being like because one, he like kind of represents the whole town, and two, he's like doing stuff that's very in character, and that also like kind of puts Stan in a conflicting position where Randy's like being very stupid and greedy, and he kind of is just like, digging them like faster and faster into the hole. And it is another episode where Stan has to kind of teach his dad a lesson, and I don't know, I just love how ridiculous the whole thing gets with like the aliens coming to Earth, and then Randy's still trying to like squirm out of it somehow. I don't know, I just love this episode.
I'm happy you like it, because again, like, I totally agree with all your points. It just doesn't stand out. I personally wouldn't put it up with the likes of like A tier, in my personal opinion. I would put it as a B tier because, like, again, all those points are completely valid. Like, he has that relationship with Stan, that back and forth, and he digs himself deeper and deeper. I just don't think he's quite like as like memorably funny as he is in the other standout episodes. But you know, if you want to put this in the A category, like, I'm not gonna fight it because this is your favorite. I'm kind of like indifferent. I wouldn't put it any lower than a B. So
yeah, I think I'll put it in a B because like it is my personal favorite, but I also like, I'm like, I don't know, maybe objectively some of the A episodes are funnier, but I just, something about this one hits a little different.
We'll let everybody else can vote. If they want to put it in the A category and enough people do, we'll like revise it, put it in the A category.
Okay, so the next one is, again, not necessarily a Randy episode, but more like Randy as a concept. What would you rank Randy's role in season 20?
Don't make me do that. You're making me think again about season 20, where really in season 20, Gerald takes kind of a Randy role. Gerald is the parent that is what Randy would normally do. And as anybody who's ever listened to our opinions on season 20, I loved this idea at first. Loved it. Absolutely, it was working out so well because Randy was already an established character, and Gerald still had a little bit more to be discovered. Unfortunately, I want to bury that shit and pretend it never happened. Oh God, I don't know with season 20. He's just kind of there. Again, because Gerald takes the spotlight for the adult role, Randy's more or less just kind of existing.
I don't know, I think I personally would put this as an F just because, no, Randy isn't as, like, horrible as Gerald did in season 20, but he's also, like, really annoying. He just, like, he keeps talking about J.J. Abrams, and then he has the whole member berries thing that never goes anywhere. I'm like, fuck off with that.
You know what? In comparison, you're absolutely right. In comparison, he's not as bad as Gerald, but that doesn't make him, like, a good use of character. I'd put this as maybe, like, a D because he's not really, like, offensive, but, like, I wouldn't argue. I could even put this as an F because he's just there. And, you know, again, like, South Park it's upsetting when South Park is forgettable. You know, a show that is so known for being iconic. Like, you'd never want something to be forgettable. Sure, it can be, like, controversial, but forgettable, that's kind of a South Park sin.
Yeah, I'll put it in the D because I think that as we'll see, there's definitely, like, Randy usage that's worse than that.
There's definitely some that are worse.
Okay, so next episode I definitely have is another obscure one, and that's Spontaneous Combustion, all the way in, like, the very beginning of the show. And I put this one because it's, like, the first Randy episode.
You know, it really is. That's, like, season 3. I'm pretty sure that was the one that, like, Matt is credited as the writer and director. Or at least the writer. That one's old. And, you know, that I think that probably would be the very first Randy episode. Especially because he gets, like, that whole song montage. This one's fine. He's fine. He's not really quite the Randy that we know just yet. So to me, it's like a C. It's like, it's not bad, but it's not quite Randy yet at his best.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think he has some funny moments in the episode, and there's a whole emotional arc that he goes through where, like, wanting to, you know, solve this and then become, like, famous or whatever. But yeah, I agree. It's like early South Park. He's not really himself yet, so yeah, I'll put it as a C.
Still learning who Randy is at this point, and if you look back at this episode after already knowing who Randy is as an established character now, in comparison, it's just kind of like, oh, is that really? This could have been like any other character. He's not quite Randy yet, but that being said, he's not he's not bad. He's just kind of there. So a C tier for me.
Okay, are you ready for this next one?
Am I?
This one, again, is not a specific episode, but how would you rank Randy and Integrity Farms?
F. Let's move on.
Okay, now how would you rank The Losing Edge?
Oh, Losing Edge is, I would say, like, Randy's role specifically. Randy's role specifically is S tier, or A tier for me. Just if we're just looking at the episode as a whole, isn't like amazing and perfect. It's either a B or an A for me because Randy singing like "You're the best around" while he's trying to beat the shit out of it's just so funny. And again, it's a little niche part of a story that's enhanced by just having Randy do that part. You know, he's not the whole focus of the entire episode, but I think he's used really, really well. He, like, embodies, because, like, if you've ever had to go to a Little League game or any other kid's sport, there's always, without fail, there's always an asshole parent. Always. So, Randy taking that a step above is, like, so in character, but he's not taken too far. And the thing is, he actually solves the story problem. Like, he actually resolves the issue for the boys. So that's even better. Like, he doesn't hurt, like, the main players in the story. He only enhances it. So I think that's, like, an A level. But you could put it in a B level if you have anything to object.
This one's kind of tricky, because, like, I'm like, I don't know, in the overall humor that Randy brings, I think it's, like, a B. But I think we'll probably put it in an A, just because of the iconic part where he's, like, getting put into the squad car. He's like, oh, I'm sorry, this is America.
Yeah, that enough. It's like, it's an iconic Randy moment, but it's iconic for him not being the main character in this story. So, but he has a lot to do with, like, solving the issue. So I think that's really cool when Randy can kind of actually solve a problem rather than cause it.
Agree.
It's very rare.
Yeah. So the next one is 2 days before the day after tomorrow. I think that's the name of the episode. It's the global warming one.
Oh yeah. This one, you know, I wouldn't say immediate when you compare it to his other really great roles, like we were just talking about. This one's more of like a B for me, I think, because, you know, he's got his funny parts, but, like, he's not responsible for the funniest things. Like, it's the other characters kind of interacting with him that make it funny. Like, when he draws, like, the dick. When he accidentally draws, like, a dick on the map and everything, people laughing at it are what make that funny. like the other audience members like trying to stifle their laughter is what makes that scene funny. And like him and the other dads like getting super high. It's not just Randy carrying that joke. It's like all three of them working together. So it's not just Randy being funny on its own. I think he just works well with the other characters. So it's not like, it's kind of like a B, because it is funny. It's just, he's not the only reason why it's funny.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would put it as a C, just because kind of like what you said, like the moments he has in the episode are really funny, but he's just not in it enough, I don't think.
Yeah, you're actually right. And when I think about it, his part could be played by anybody else.
Right.
It's not one of those instances where he has to be the character to do that role. It could have been really anybody doing those couple of parts. So yeah, you could put it in a C, and because it's not bad, it's funny, it's just not enough.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so you ready for our last episode?
Let's go for it.
The last episode is With Apologies to Jesse Jackson.
This one is probably I don't know, you tell me. What do you think?
I think this one's an A. I love this episode.
I was gonna go too. I didn't want to sound like I was giving Randy too much credit, because like this, I mentioned it, like I quite literally said it word for word. This is one where, because of Randy's mistakes, Stan can learn a lesson, and Stan teaches that lesson to the audience. So, but he's also fucking Randy alone. Besides being the vessel for a really positive message, he's funny. He's really, really funny. Him kissing Jesse Jackson's ass is super funny. And him on the car ride home with Sharon with her head in her hand, like, while they're driving home from the game show. That's classic. It's funny.
I honestly would put this as an A, like, just for, like, the opening scene. It's just fucking hysterical. And I agree that I love Randy throughout this episode, because he is very, like, dumb and Randy-like, but he also, like you said, he does it to, like, motivate Stan to learn a lesson, and he also, he does a really good job of embodying the joke that, like, Matt and Trey were trying to make, which is that, like, if white people had an offensive word for them, like the N-word, they would, like, make it illegal. It's, like, the way he does that is so funny.
Exactly. Like, people are already starting to do with Karen. Mm-hmm. Like, how much backlash you'll get from a white person for using friggin' Karen or okay boomer? Like, they will lose their fucking mind. So, and people are already trying to say, like, don't call your customers this or that, or don't use that language. But, like, the N-word's totally fine. But, yeah, no, this is definitely, I agree. I think this would be an A tier, because it just hits all the tick marks where Randy is used, like, the best.
Well, there you go, guys. That's our Randy ranking episode. And before you call us haters, look at how many of them are in the A and B category.
You're actually forgetting a storyline.
I am?
Which probably won't matter, because it's going to end up in the F tier anyway. But you forgot to talk about Randy's involvement with the PC principal storyline.
That's right. I forgot about that.
You forgot all about woke Randy.
I did.
And I knew you had already forgotten about it, because before we started this episode.
Why didn't you tell me that?
Surprise! I'm going to talk about this. Because I kind of want to... we didn't really talk about Integrity Farms, but everybody kind of knows that Randy's kind of getting old. Integrity Farms. Why I'm bringing PC Randy into this equation is because this is really where Randy's annoyance solidifies. It's unfortunate, but this is the storyline. Again, he's not as, like, prominent as he is Integrity Farms, but this is really where he becomes that annoying Homer or Peter Griffin archetype. And, like, it's kind of sad. It's kind of sad when I look back at it, because, like, him doing, like, the PC chants and him constantly getting drunk and talking about microaggressions and everything, he's overdone. he's not really funny. He battles being the main character throughout this like era, and he also battles being the comedic relief. Like you have to pick one side or the other when you're writing a cohesive story. Either he is the main focus and you treat him as such, or he's the comedic relief. You know, he's added to just give a pause or a break in the story. And they try and make him both. And it's really, for me, it's kind of the beginning of the end with Randy. So I'd put him in the F category when we talk about his PC storyline. Because, and again, it goes nowhere. That's the thing. Is with the A tier episodes and storylines, even the B tier, like, they have a purpose and then they finish that purpose and then they end. PC Randy goes nowhere. He doesn't change. Like, he really, you know, he has his role with like getting the Whole Foods in or whatever, but he doesn't, there's no like ending to this saga. It just kind of drops off. And so yeah, for that reason, it goes in the F tier. And it's also important because it's really truly where Randy's like less desirable portrayals are calcified in the show.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. It also kind of hits things that we don't like about Randy's storylines, is that he's also like being an asshole to like Kyle and Sharon and other characters are getting hurt for it, and then he's just being like not funny and taking up too much screen time. So yeah, I would agree, but I sure wish I had a little picture I could move on my screen, but I don't.
Well, that's my fault, but I decided to surprise you. Why did that do this any good? It probably didn't, but...
Yeah, thanks for the surprise. I hated it.
Thanks, I hate it.
Well, you guys, that's our episode. Let us know what you think in the comments below.
Let us know how wrong we are. Let us know how our opinions about the show are completely wrong.
Yeah, and
we're fake fans of South Park.
Yeah, and rank your own Randy episodes in the comments below if you'd like.
Let us know if we should also like do other character rankings or anything. Like we did this one in particular because, you know, we shit a lot on Randy. But, like, we also kind of wanted to show that, like, characters can be used correctly and they're not doomed to be shit. They just go on for too long.
Yeah, I agree. We do come across as Randy haters, and I guess we kind of are, but I think it's very much because of how his portrayal in the most recent years. I mean, if you look at the chart, we like most of Randy episodes. It's just the way he's been used.
That's when it's almost more painful. It's worse, like, when a character that you really love and you know can be super well used and you know can be super funny starts to deteriorate. That's more difficult than having a shitty character from the beginning.
Yep, it's more tragic.
But yeah, thank you guys for listening and watching. Be sure to send us some comments. We love those. Even if they're hate comments, it still fuels us to do things out of spite.
Alright, thanks guys. Bye.
Bye.